do FEBRABAN Cases. E só dando informe que vocês podem
Hello, I'd like to inform that you can check out everything that's going on the FEBRABAN Tech app. You can see on the other side of your badge and on the FEBRABAN.com website the traffic, everything that's going on around us as well. Now let's continue with our talks, which is filled with a lot of inspiration. The panel that we will follow now is called AI, Scalable and Responsible AI. I'd like to call to the stage our speakers. I'll begin with Juliane Paulista, who is a Banco do Brasil exec.
Quero chamar também o Marco.
I'd also like to call Marco Pereira, who is the auditing superintendent in the Votorantim Bank.
Quero chamar também
also Henrique Arutin, who is a AI and data superintendent in the Bradesco Bank.
Vou chamar também o Guilherme
Araguchi, who is data senior superintendent for AI, customer sites and innovation in Bradesco Seguros.
Quero chamar também
also Luiz Humberto, who is technology superintendent in the Banco do Nordeste.
E para mediar essa conversa,
to mediate this wonderful talk, I'd like to bring to the stage Thelma Luqueta, who is an EY associate for the financial service of LATAM.
Boa tarde.
Good afternoon.
Como estão todos?
How is everybody? I hope you all had lunch and you're feeling good now to talk about such a relevant topic, which is a responsible and scalable AI governance topic. This is an agenda that has been gaining a lot of relevance because of the AI hype.
A gente vem cada vez mais. Eu estou me escutando aqui, não está funcionando. Vou tirar.
This is not working. I'm gonna.
A gente vem cada vez mais trabalhando essa agenda.
More and more, we've been working with this agenda, facing a complexity or this storm or urgency on the technology topic. One of the exponential topics, we know that it has been advancing more and more, and we need to follow this trend. So when we don't have that in a governable way within our institution, we are under several risks. The objective then is to tell you about a case of use that we'd had with Banco do Brasil, a very intense journey for responsible and scalable AI, and also we wanted to bring other institutions to show you that there's no use of me having several maturity or even what is important really is to begin this agenda because the AI topic came to stay, and once we disseminate this within our organization, this is more and more difficult to monitor, so we will present case of a real use. We hope you like the discussion, so thank you all of everybody who is present, your availability to be here. I will begin.
Já passamos pelo nome dos nossos convidados, mas eu vou começar aqui falando para vocês.
Talking to you about a journey which begins in the data governance field, and if we don't have very well set rules, we will have difficulty doing the generative AI. So what's the point? When we show you the steps we're talking about frameworking this structure with politics, security, quality, and the compliance issue also. When we talk about governance, data governance for AI, we talk about defining ethical principles, usage. Talking about specific AI governance, we talk about a study, a structure of decision-making, risk management, and data protection. And we arrive then at the generative AI governance, and we implement the process, which is the cycle and the life cycle of all of the AI cycles that are generated in the operation. I'm going to tell you a video. The discussion, there is a QR code that you can scan, which there is a paper that was written, so you can read this case, the QR code. Okay, so let's begin the discussion.
Julie,
please tell us a little bit about the journey. How was your journey of strengthening traditional governments? We began. It's important to show this structuring until where we are now, a generative AI, as it was said from other panels. We have 700 models. And so please tell us your learning curve and your challenges. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here, Thelma, with your colleagues, our partners here from the industry, sharing with you governance topics. We've never talked so much about this topic as in the last few years. And the strategic point as well. I believe you showed, Thelma, in your speech, this macro journey. Some of the journey in the bank really followed this evolution, we can, so to speak. We began working in the bank since all the big data, AI tools for the interaction with customers, and we have evolved a few frameworks for us are the today I work in this unit, which is analytics and AI in the bank, and this allowed us to gain scale and speed in this implementation. Then we begin to structure the data governance, and for those of us who have been working on this for a long time now, we begin with this journey with LGBT compliance, regulatory, and in the need for us to centralize these data in a data lake, in a single point where we can generate insight and generate products. And we begin then to treat this as a very strategic point in the world. I was looking into statistics that in the last years, the amount of data generated increased 15-fold. We have a lot of data to manage. We need capacity, environments really that have this capacity. We need this to be really generating a lot of value for the business. This was important to us, defining our capacities. So we go into a very important pillar, focus on culture, which every company is looking for. It's no different in us. We need to do an upskilling and reskilling of the people. We have a singularity that we hire by, they have a journey when they're going to be hired, and we need to do this training along this journey. That's precisely why we have this theme of education as a core value to us. That's why we really want to scale up solutions. So despite our area having analytic in our area, this is something that's pertaining many different areas. Many areas are developing products, and in the end we have a stage where we are now, which is of scaling, generating value, especially with generative AI that came with a technique to give us, to democratize the usage of AI in the bank, and it gives us strength in this movement generating value. So these are stepping stones, and the message is that this is an evolution, and we won't lose the building blocks on which we grow and evolve towards an AI that is responsible, sustainable, and generates value to the business. So I would like to open the discussion to our speakers. Henrique, can you give us a few examples, please? Yes, very well. Can you hear me?
Obrigado pelo convite.
Thank you for the invitation, Thelma, colleagues from FEBRABAN.
Aqui no Brasil, que a gente começou cerca de 10 anos atrás, nossa jornada de IA, muito similar
10 years ago, similarly to what Juliana brought to us, and we learned a lot. There was a lot of mistakes as well. It's much more experimental, and today we have a lot more maturity. Our main case is via Bradesco Inteligência Artificial, which is our assistant who was born to help employees in the agencies, and was expanded to our customers, and this was the first learning curve. Tested it in home, and you will end up finding some challenges, and after that we gain traction, and then we scale up in a responsible manner. We've had machine learning in the areas of credit, CRM, and it has a maturity that is imposed by the regulating actor, quality of data guarantees, and the construction of platforms was crucial for us to arrive where we are today. We have a data platform that was from a systemic origin. Today we get inspired by data mesh, data fab, so we can really consume. We created an AI platform which improved our recent place, which would be using generative AI. So now we changed to OpenAI and others who are behind. And this was only possible because we created an AI platform within the data protection framework, and this comprises these platform ecosystem, so we can use it in the best way with AI and real-time decision, improving the experience in several points of contact. We have cases of back office reduction of lead time, looking at norms and extensive information, many co-pilots, and many are already running. That's it in a nutshell. Thank you. Luis, can you tell us a little bit of the governance journey in the Nordeste Bank, please?
Tudo certo? Bom, boa tarde.
Good afternoon to all of you. I'd like to greet the panelists. Thank you, Thelma, for the invitation. Guilherme, Marco, Juliana.
E cumprimentar todos que estão aqui, principalmente os colegas do banco que estão aí prestigiando.
Especially the colleagues
Tô vendo tchauzinho já por ali, viu?
From the bank. I can see you waving. Banco do Nordeste is a 70-year bank created by law. It invests the FNE, the national funds. We have invested over 70 billion reais in the region. The bank has one of the greatest microcredit program in Latin America, which together have been invested over 20 billion, and this is sustained on the idea of transforming people's lives. Our role is not only investing to develop or to have investment returns. We have a role of social transformation as well. And why do I say that? Because the bank has a range of very special clients. We're talking about the client
né, do alfinete ao foguete.
We
A
go
gente
from
trabalha com
the
eles
pin to the
para
rocket.
construir
We work
desde o
with them
princípio
to build
esse crédito.
this credit
E
from
essas
the
informações são
start.
vitais para o banco. Então,
And this information is
há
vital to
mais
the
de
bank.
uma década ele
Over a
trabalha nesse
decade ago, the
movimento
bank has
de
been
dados,
working
né?
on this data
Ele se
movement.
estruturou em
It has
2021,
been
tem
structured in
uma área que
2021.
trabalha
There's
essa
an area
parte
that
de
works with
governança de dados,
data
tem o
governance.
suporte a
There is
isso.
a support for
E
that.
ano passado a
And
diretoria
last
do
year,
banco
the board of
decidiu
directors
transformar esse tema num
decided to
tema cada
transform
vez mais
this
dentro da estratégia da
issue
instituição
in a very,
e
very
criou um projeto
relevant
estratégico, que é a
topic and
nomenclatura que a gente
created a
usa lá, que é um projeto
strategic
que a gente acompanha, a
project which
diretoria
the
particularmente
board of
acompanha em
directors
cada reunião a
follows
evolução desse
the
caso.
evolution of this case on
E
every
nesse processo a gente
opportunity.
contratou a Ernst Young, né,
And
para nos dar esse
we
reforço na
hired
parte de
Ernest
governança de
Young
dados. E a
for
partir disso,
data
a
governance,
gente
and
está
from there
buscando
on, we
encontrar
started
outro
to
potencial, um outro
try to
diferencial
find
que a
this
gente precisa
potential that
para
we need
ajudar essas
for
pessoas, né, no
helping
nosso
these
papel de
people
desenvolvimento
in our
social,
role
ajudar
of
essas pessoas
social
a
development to
encontrar,
help
né, o
them
seu
to
caminho
find their way
como
forward
como instituição
as an
e como
institution and
agente, o grande agente de
as the
desenvolvimento da
great
região. Né?
development
A
agent in the
jornada
region.
nossa
Our journey
de governança de dados,
of data
estruturando
governance
isso, a ideia
being
também
structured, the
é a gente
idea
estruturar a
is for
governança de
us
IA.
to
Né? Nós temos
structure
muitas ações
AI
relacionadas com IA.
governance as well.
Nos
We have
setores de
several
crédito, a
AI
gente tem muita ação de IA, né, para
projects
desempenho e performance,
for
mas não é só isso,
performance,
né? A
and not
gente tem
only
buscado
we have
mais,
tried
né?
to
E o
look
nosso
for
papel
more.
aqui da
And our
Odebranche,
role here from
dentro
now
de uma
on
instituição pública,
as a public
a gente
institution
não só
is
trabalhar no desempenho e
not only
performance, mas também
working on
evoluir, né?
development
Ou
and
seja, a gente
performance,
tem
but to evolve.
você usou aí os building blocks, né? Eu digo
You
lá as
use the
escadinhas, né?
building
A
blocks
gente
where I
cada
say
vez
the
mais
little
perseguir
steps.
o movimento de uma
So
IA
the idea
governável,
is to
uma
look
IA
or
que seja
strive
responsável,
for responsible
transparente, né?
and
E
transparent AI,
segura,
and
né? Com ações
mostly
de conscientização
safe,
que levem não só
with
nossos usuários,
with
como também os nossos
which
clientes a
take
apostarem nessa
which
ideia.
may
Perfeito,
lead our
obrigada.
customers to really bet on this
Vamos
idea.
lá, vou
Thank
pro
you.
Marco. Vamos lá, Marco. Você com o chapéu de auditoria interna, conta
Marco,
pra mim
tell
como é que
me
foi essa
how
jornada
was
do
this
Banco
journey
Votorantim
for the Votorantim Bank
e a importância,
and the
né, da
importance
auditoria já
of
tá aí na
auditing
frente, fazendo os
leading the
controles e
way to
monitorando
control
toda a
and
jornada aí,
monitor
para
this
que o
journey
Banco Votorantim pudesse
for
trabalhar com mais
the bank to
liberdade
be able
dentro de
to
uma
work
agenda
more
tão
freely within
exponencial
such an
como é a
exponential
agenda que é.
agenda as is the case for AI.
Boa tarde a todos.
Good
Obrigado
afternoon for
pelo
all of you.
convite,
Thank you for the invitation,
participação aqui com os
and it's
colegas.
great to participate here with the
A
colleagues.
Julie mencionou que você
Julie
nunca se ouviu
mentioned
falar tanto de
that
governança de IA
we've never heard
numa agenda
AI governance
FEBRABAN. E
so
eu, como
frequently in a
auditora,
FEBRABAN
fico
agenda, and
muito
me
contente
as
com isso.
an
É
auditor,
importante
I'm
que todos
very
fiquem
happy. It's important
preocupados, que
for
todos
everybody
fiquem
to
atentos aos
think
riscos.
about it and be
Afinal, é isso que
aware
a
of the
gente,
risks. This
vendo
is
a aceleração e
precisely
da maneira como
what
isso
we
vem
think
crescendo,
about when we
se a
look
gente não tiver uma governança
into the
adequada,
acceleration
realmente a gente
of
daqui a
this
algum
process,
tempo
and
vai ficar a pé
if we don't do
sem de
that, we're
fato
gonna
conseguir
be
utilizar da
left
melhor maneira,
behind without
né?
being able to use it in the best way
Diferente dos
possible.
colegas, né,
Differently
como
from our
você mencionou,
colleagues,
vou
as
trazer
you have
até para
said,
um detalhamento
I'm
mais
gonna
olhando
give
para a
you
auditoria interna, né? O Banco BV tem várias
the auditing
iniciativas semelhantes dos
perspective.
colegas,
We have several
mas
similar initiatives,
quando a gente
but
iniciou com a
when we
IA
began with
generativa lá no
generative
início, a gente foi um
AI,
dos primeiros
we
que
were
foi
one of the
buscar
pioneers
estudar,
who
avaliar,
started to
entender,
evaluate
até
and
porque a gente
understand
sabia
and
que isso iria
study, because
acelerar
we
de maneira
knew this
absurda,
would
como já vinha
really
acelerando, e
gain
a
a
gente
lot of
teria que ter
traction,
não somente
and we would
condições
need
de
to
utilizar da
have
melhor maneira para a
the
auditoria
ability
interna,
to
mas
use that,
também ter
but
condições de auditar.
also
Todos esses
to
processos que os nossos
audit
colegas estão
all of
dizendo,
these
os auditores têm
processes.
que ir lá e auditar e ver
The
se de fato está
auditors
sendo utilizado
maybe have to be
e
able to
aplicado da melhor maneira. Então, quando
understand
eu
if
olho
it's
para a
being used in
jornada
the
do
best way
BV, da
possible. So
auditoria do
when I
BV
look into the
especificamente,
BV
a
auditing
gente
journey,
iniciou
we
trazendo
began
como um bom auditor
bringing
novamente políticas
a
claras,
clear
definições
policies,
estruturadas,
structured
de uma maneira
decisions
ética,
in an
olhando sempre para a
ethical
segurança.
way,
A
looking
gente
into
foi buscar o apoio da
security.
EY
We
para
tried
construir
for the we looked
framework
for
de
the
riscos para
support of
conseguir ter
AY
condições de
for
avaliar
building a framework
e
of
conseguir de
risks for us
fato
to be able to indeed
treinar esse auditor para ele
train
saber
the
do que a gente está
auditor to know
falando
what
e
we're
ele ter
talking about,
condições de
and
auditar as
that
áreas,
he is
né?
able to
Ponto que
audit the areas.
a gente se preocupa
A
pouco
very important
com
point
os
that we
novos
worry
riscos
about
emergentes que
with
têm
the new
surgido com
emerging
isso,
risks
além do risco de segurança, que tem
Besides the
aumentado
risk of
gradativamente,
security,
a
which
gente
has
também
been
tem uma
rising
preocupação
steadily,
com a
we also work
escalabilidade,
with
né? Tem muita
or
gente
think about
utilizando IA de
scalability.
maneira
There are
não
many
governada ou
people
não declarada
using
dentro da
AI
organização,
in a
né? A gente
non-declared or
conhece quem é aqui, o pessoal aqui de
non-governed way.
tecnologia,
We know people
um dos
from
famosos
AI.
é do IT, a gente pode ter
We may
de
have a
inteligência
boom of
artificial
AI
sendo IA, talvez, sem controle, sem
without
governança
control,
de um
without
monte de
governance, and
processo
many
importante,
processes
crucial para a
that
empresa,
are important for the
utilizando
company
inteligência
is
artificial
using
não
artificial intelligence and
governada
not
e sem que todas as
ungoverned
áreas
and
que devem governar tenham ciência.
without the
Então,
areas
acho
knowing
muito
about it.
importante e oportuno
So
essa
I think it's
participação
very
nesse painel
timely, the
e espero
participation in this
estar
panel, and I
colaborando.
hope to
Obrigado.
Obrigada,
collaborate.
Marco. Agora sim, agenda de
So the agenda for
conta pra gente
security
como que vocês
services.
estão implementando a
How
governança
are you
de
implementing
dados e
the
a
data
generativa
governance
dentro da
and
Bradesco
generative
Seguros, por
AI
favor.
within Bradesco Seguros,
Bom,
please?
então, primeiro, obrigado pelo
First, thank you
convite.
for the
Também
invitation.
cumprimentar os colegas aqui
I'd
do
like
banco, da
to
Bradesco Seguros que
say
estão nos
hello to our
acompanhando.
colleagues who
Concordo
are here.
totalmente com a visão
I
que a
really
EY nos
agree
ajudou a estruturar a
with the
governança
vision
de
that
dados
AY
na Bradesco
helped us
Seguros já há bastante
govern,
tempo. E a governança
structure
de
the
AI é uma
data governance,
extensão
and
da questão da governança
AI
de dados
governance is an
inteligentes. Até porque
extension of
dados é o
that governance
backbone de qualquer
because data
modelo
is the
de IA,
backbone
seja
of
generativo ou não,
any
que a gente
model of
vá
AI,
incluir na
generative or not,
organização.
that we will
Falando
implement in the
especificamente de IA
organization.
generativa,
Talking
a gente tem uma
specifically about
governança, tem um
active agenda, we
estatuto,
have a
mas aquilo que a
governance
gente faz é
framework
mais do que memorando na parede,
more
né?
than a
Então, é importante a gente
memorandum.
unir as
It's
pessoas,
important for
quebrar
us
as
to
barreiras
really
nesse
break
momento
down the barriers,
de
unite
corrida do
people
ouro da IA, né? Então,
in this
todas as áreas aí com a
gold
meta de
rush.
fazer
We
uma
have
entrega
this
de IA na
area
companhia. Então, como
of
que a gente consegue
that
fazer com
tries to
que
deliver
uma
AI in the
organização com
company. So
8 mil
how can we
funcionários,
make a
diferentes empresas, diferentes
8,000 employee
departamentos colaborem para enxergar o
company
outro
to
lado? E, de certa forma, foi o que a gente
collaborate?
fez. A
And
gente
that's
criou
what
um
we
grupo, uma
did. We
comunidade de
created a
dados de IA, uma
community,
tribo específica
a
para trocar
specific
experiências
group
entre
to
cientistas de dados,
interchange
engenheiros de machine learning em
experience
relação
between
aos
science
aprendizados
engineers
desenvolvimentos
and machine learning
relacionados
experts
à GNI, além da
related to
BIA, no nosso
GNI.
caso é
Besides
corretora,
BIA,
não é
our
a BIA
case,
gerente do banco, né? Mas a
it's
gente tem a
just
BIA que apoia os corretores para apoio em relação
we
à
have
dúvida
BIA
de
that
produtos, de
supports
processo, ela
the
já está
employees in
habilitada
terms, it's
atualmente com
already
IA
set
generativa.
up with
E
generative
além desse
AI.
caso, a gente tem
And
observado
besides that, we
aplicação de uso
have
em várias áreas do banco
others,
segurador,
other
seja em subscrição de risco, seja para gestão
tools
de
for
jurídico,
risk
realmente vários
subscription,
casos em uso para a
many
gente poder
cases in
apoiar
use,
aqui a
so we can
eficiência
support
do próprio
the
funcionário
efficiency of
da
the
Bradesco Seguros
employee
no seu dia
of
a dia.
Bradesco
Tem uma
Seguros
parte
on their
importante que se refere à
day-to-day. There's an
documentação.
important part
Então,
referring
muito do
to
que foi falado aqui
documentation. A
na
lot of what was
jornada, né, a
said
gente
in
já
the journey.
tinha uma
We
estrutura
had
de
a
modelos de
structure
riscos em
of risk
várias
models.
mãos. A gente tem documentados
We
mais de
have
350
over
modelos,
300
tanto
models,
de machine learning
350 models,
tradicional como
both
de IA
traditional
generativa também já estão sendo
machine learning
documentados.
and active
E a
agenda is
importância
being
disso é
documented. And
justamente
the
você
importance of
trazer
this is precisely
visibilidade daquilo que está
bringing
sendo feito, como
visibility
foi
to what is
colocado
being
pelo
done,
Márcio, né?
as
Está todo mundo
Marcin
correndo
very well
atrás,
put.
vez ou outra
Everybody
tem área
is
fazendo uma
trying
determinada
to not fall
funcionalidade de um
behind.
produto e se não conversar com
And
o outro,
if
não souber
one
que
product
você está
does
usando
not
uma mesma base
talk
de
to the
conhecimento,
other,
você vai
and
acabar tendo problema.
you will
Então,
end up having
o foco
problems.
hoje
So the
realmente é a
focus
gente
today
evoluir com a
is
governança,
to
tem muito a
evolve
ser
in
feito,
governments.
várias
There's a
áreas nos
lot to be
apoiando
done.
nessa
Many
jornada,
areas
para
are
que a gente
supporting
possa dar
us, so we
visibilidade e
can give
trabalhar na
visibility and
cultura
work
e nos
on the
habilitadores de
culture
tecnologia
and
para a gente
on
avançar
the
nessa jornada.
technology
Obrigada,
providers.
Rara.
Thank
Bom,
you, Hara.
vamos entrar
So
agora,
now
pessoal,
let's
na
talk
agenda de
about
governança de IA
the
generativa. Acho que está todo
generative
mundo
AI
ansioso
agenda. Everybody's anxious
para
to talk
isso.
about
E
it.
a primeira,
And the
primeiro macro
first
processo aqui que a
macro
gente
process
estrutura
that
dentro
we
da nossa
structure
metodologia da
within
EY
our
é a
AY
definição e a
methodology is the
seleção
definition and
consciente, que basicamente
conscience
significa
selection, which basically
pré-ciclo
stands for the
da geração ou do
pre-cycle of
desenvolvimento desse
the
ativo dentro
development
da
of this asset
organização.
within the
Aqui a gente está
organization.
falando sobre eu ter a confiança de
We're talking
escolher
about
os meus
the customer
parceiros
being able
corretos, né? Muito se fala sobre
trust
as big techs serem
the partners.
corresponsáveis
We
ali por
talk
tudo que é
about
gerado
a
de
lot about the
informação
big
ou
techs being
desinformação
responsible
dentro
for information of
desse
misinformation
mundão aí que a
within
gente
this
vem explorando cada vez mais.
world that
E
we've been
quando a gente se
exploring more and more.
associa,
And
né,
when
nós como
we
instituições
associate
financeiras, nós nos
ourselves as
associamos a
financial
essas
institutions to
empresas,
these
qual a escolha
companies,
do meu melhor
how can
fornecedor?
I
Como é que é
choose
feito
my
esse
best supplier?
estabelecimento? Precisa
How
ser
is this
feito de uma
selection
forma muito
made?
consciente e
This
precisa
must be done
ser,
very consciously,
essa escolha tem que ser bastante
and it can
assertiva,
be
no
very
sentido de que
assertive in the
estamos
sense
juntos,
that
mãos
we are
dadas, para
together,
fazer isso
hand in
acontecer
hand, to make
dentro
this
da minha
happen
instituição.
in my
Dentro
institution.
desse macro
Within
processo,
this
a gente
macro
destaca tanto o
process, we highlight
credenciamento quanto a
both
homologação.
the registration presentation, and I open the question for Banco do Brasil. How does this criteria, supported by a solid governance, help you to create a safe base to and aligned to the values, core values of the bank. This is a crucial point. In our case, Banco do Brasil is a company with a long legacy, over 200 years of history. We cannot just simply take a tool and plug it in our processes. We cannot just plug and play or plug and pray. We know it's not as simple as it seems to make this integration, but what happens? Every day there are new LLMs, new tools. So how can we know if it indeed has an adherence and it will deliver with quality what the bank is looking for? So we developed with AI a process to use these LLMs because it uses multiple agents, autonomous agents, to be able to attack the model, interpret the results, and test it in a dynamic environment of what we do, the stress test to evaluate up until where the model is safe. So we took two specific models which are widely used in the market, and these models were not approved in over 70% of the vulnerability tests when we talk about issues of toxic language, prejudice, suicide topics, guns. These are specific vulnerabilities that we want to tackle, how the model is prepared to deal with that, and we identified that there was this need to develop specific guardrails to treat these vulnerabilities. There was a very important test, and when we identify the vulnerabilities, we are able to deal with each one of them. It doesn't mean we're not going to use the models, but we're going to treat vulnerabilities and identify and fine-tune the context or develop a guardrail. And in the case of this test that we ran, when we applied guardrail, the vulnerabilities went down to over 10 or less than 10%. Fact is, we cannot just plug and play. We need to really make this technology adequate, and we don't have access to its code or on every aspect. And this is a very crucial stage in the use of generative AI.
Thanks. Luis, Banco do Nordeste, how does data governance prepares the bank to make more conscious decisions when choosing future technology and partners?
Só tirar esse bichinho aqui que ele fica zunindo aqui no meu ouvido, ele fica ecozinho chato aqui. Mas vamos lá. No caso do banco,
in our bank, the strategic project that we defined for data governance is to structure all the necessary bases for us to evolve and move on to the next stages that we are designing for our roadmap. In this project, we defined already data architecture, which is extremely important for us, especially by focusing on clients. The social factor is very important, and focus on clients is truly important. Therein, in the data governance structuring process, we have entered into a nice partnership with you so that we can continue to evolve in cases that we can extract directly from the bank in practical terms to see what we can offer as our best, and also with the support area for that governance department. We have alternatives that are working with AI, and those initiatives are going to be structured and will become better using those databases that we structure together with the projects. Our vision is also to expand and better our partnerships with suppliers or providers. We work with Microsoft today, and we are very much concerned when we were working with PI for our partners to use it in order to safekeep data. And we cannot just have a piece of data in any type of cloud that's processed by any company in which we do not know what's happening with that information. That's part of the concerns we had. And it's immense. We have been talking about an open channel with Centrum because they have an alternative cloud operating that avoid that contact of those who are not part of the government or a foreign contact. So that information, which is part of a strategic piece of data for us, is safe kept, and also we have talked to IBM, and the idea is for us to start working on a more solid process for AI governance from end to end, because as Guilherme said, there are shadow AIs, and that technology will be present, users are going to use them, and they will find a crack for them to use it because they do not enjoy that type of technology, and then they will start defending this technology. I like AI from A, from B to C to D, and if you do not control your environment, your data, and everything, your organization may be exposed to a cyber threat somewhere in the world. Thanks, Luis. Let's move on from registration and homologation, and let's move on to restructuring and responsible development. After choosing, we need to structure, develop, and protect. We need to guarantee safety, security, and ethical alignment since the beginning. For Banco do Brasil, how did you structure the organization of your assets and thus guaranteeing the development of whatever you need, which is aligned to the ethical principles of Banco do Brasil? Well, the first stage in the process is to define clear guidelines of what you can, what you can't do, and what's the alignment regarding models and the development of AI. In the case of the bank, we already had basic guidelines, and we worked on them, and we published our guidelines for responsible AI this year. We were the first bank to publish that, which is available in our relationships side for investors. As of those guidelines that clearly direct the work for developers, users, and those interacting with a solution from our bank, we placed the structure within a tool, which is called Gaia, which is analytic asset management with AI, and it manages the life cycle of all those models and solutions. It starts with the registration all the way to production. So what's important in this process? Well, firstly, the participation of multiple parties in the evaluation of that. In our case, in order to have a solution in the air, we analyze data safety, data security, so the responsible team is going to look at privacy. If there are personal pieces of data, how are we handling those pieces? And model validation, which is also super important. We are regulated. We need to do that because of the regulation from the central bank, but we go beyond that, and we try to do that as easy as possible by taking the business into account. And that type of catalog, and we have more than 1,500 catalog models, helps us have that inventory idea and facilitates the use, because there are many models that can also be reused by departments, which becomes a huge AI solution marketplace. And also in governance, those who are there have that view of the solutions life cycle, all the way from the implementation, the creation of the development, and the implementation of the model and monitoring. Thank you very much. Marco, now for you the same question, because we just heard about cataloging and defining the risks and everything that's produced in AI assets in institutions. What's your opinion, the step you made when implementing the entire process, methodologies, controls, monitoring based on internal audits? So what happens? What gains did you have with that? The main gain happened before establishing governance with policies and procedures. And we trained the entire team. Together with you, we assembled a training program that was quite appropriate. And we aligned the knowledge. So you have professionals who are quite familiar with technology, those who are not that much, and within the tools that were homologated by the bank at the beginning of the work, we were able to train all the auditors for them to be able not just to use the tools, but also be able to audit something when facing an AI process and eventually criticize the process. That was crucial for the success at the beginning of the journey. And a second idea is that we structured an area. Together now in auditing, the auditing department, we have a specific area to talk about methodology and AI governance. So we gave them power within the structure with a function which is called AI political governance. We are trained with a structure that helps us with that, and we are able to assemble governance within the audit. So all the internal initiatives in the audit go through a homologation process, guaranteeing that they follow all the processes, that following ethic with no bias and safety. And as of the application, we take a case and we roll it with all the auditors, and as of that, we catalog the solution, and from then on, all the auditors can start using it. Additionally, we have other AI solutions that we cataloged in the BB bank so that all areas can use it also. Great, Marco. Thank you.
Passamos agora para a fase de validação.
Let's move on now to validation and formal approval. We are talking about conscious choices. Who will be my partners? How do I define my best practices so that I comply with all of that? How am I going to catalog my risks? And once I develop an AI solution, how is that validation and approval process? In our E&Y methodology, we think about creating agents, which are robots that actually identify vulnerabilities in any type of asset which is generated for AI to analyze it. It's called Red Team, the technical name. And we are there actually testing with AI agents that asset and checking what vulnerability could be found in the structure in order to support the institution and also to prevent any type of exposure to risk. Coming back to the question for you, how does that creation of formal processes for validation and approval help guarantee governance, trust, and responsibility in the implementation of AI implementations in Banco do Brasil? As I said, we have that treadmill to work with the life cycle and production for the traditional models of AI and machine learning that already happens within a validation process. And the nice thing about this is that this is not just for one single department in the back. We have several departments taking part in that process that creates a better and richer approach. We have the compliance team with the risk of vision, then we have information security team, and then the risk board of directors. So this construction is the first great lesson. It's not just for one single department. We have a multidisciplinary team that works with several areas in the bank so that we can have a more encompassing vision. The second great lesson learned is that when we migrate to generative AI, we have to adapt. Firstly, we need to think about definitions. That seems to be the base, but the simple definition of what is generative AI, what is a prompt, what's an AI system, what's an agent, what's an assistant, those are important definitions that have to be in place. And since this is new nomenclature, sometimes that creates confusion. In the end, what I'm referring to is definitions are important. When we have that as part of a cycle. Secondly, the adaptation of governance. The way in which we work with governance from the traditional model is not the same way in which we are going to carry out governance for a generative AI solution. So a use case, which is a nomenclature we use because we're not validating a model, we are validating a use case and the responses that that use case is offering is adequate for that business problem, and they need monitoring within a life cycle with human creatorship, which is called the human in the loop, because generative AI learns according to the context, and it's necessary for us to have that monitoring. And the validation in the case of generative AI is also different. That was a great lesson learned in that process. We cannot just have governance hindering the learning process or that it becomes an obstacle. It needs to be an enabler of these solutions together with generative AI. However, we need to do that in an adaptive way. In the bank, we talk about two things. First, integrated governance, which is something you spoke about, end-to-end governance from the data to the final product. We need to have that within a single treadmill. And we need to have adaptive governance according to the criticality of the use case. If it's a use case where you need an assistant within the machine or focused on helping an employee in a certain situation, that's one thing. If you have generative AI, which is going to offer responses to a client, it's a different thing. So we need to have those different weights and measures, otherwise that's going to be even more expensive than the original idea. We want to use the same governance for everything, like a one-size-fits-all. Good. Enrique, considering the business diversity at Bradesco and how you are escalating AI in the organization, tell us how you are working with validation processes and approval processes so as to guarantee the lowest possible risk regarding reputation, the brand, or a bias. Tell us, what are you doing that in Bradesco? In Bradesco, we created an AI governance framework which involves several departments, which helps us have risk and control areas, data area, technical areas, looking at the problem together and overseeing what's happening. That's all very new. So we have something similar to what you said as Red Team, which are internal teams, and researchers who support us working with simulations concerning attacks and the identification of impromptu vulnerabilities, because there are many things just popping up. We have innovation and working with data exploration, but we also created a platform bridge. That's a platform. It's a generative AI platform. So internally, I connect to any player with OpenAI, Gemini, DeepSeek, being supported by Microsoft as a partner within that governed environment, together with the data, everything integrated in one single place that allows us to enable any use case or business area from diverse ones and create quick experiments, and that's integrated to other systems in Bradesco, so I can escalate that better and control costs, which in the beginning was a bit more critical. That's a bit cheaper today, but the token cost of a generative AI was quite high. That's important governance to avoid having a use case which is not going to be payable, because the cost of generative AI could be more expensive than another type of automation. So we also allow those groups to test at risk business areas. We can escalate it, is it safe, and then we evolve, and then we also have as data scientists together to monitor that and to understand the performance metrics from AI, which is different from other metrics that we are used to, in order to acquire maturity and escalate that, and eventually we acquire maturity and by piloting and scaling and gaining trust. But there are many things that we do not know in this world, and we'll continue to learn and go for trial and error, and then we will optimize all the teams. Certainly, I usually say that we are going to keep on learning. This is alive. We will continue to adapt, which we will discover many things. So, just to recap, We identified some intelligent choices. We applied best practices. We mapped everything I have in assets in the organization. I create this process for the new assets that are coming in. I classify the risks. After I start developing, I apply certain rules for validation for what I developed, to see if there were gaps or vulnerabilities in the solution. Then we have an approval committee which somehow validates if that solution is good to go, so that I can upload it to my production environment and I can put that into a platform. So basically, that's the process in a very simplistic way. As of that, we move on to what we call monitoring, which is the fourth stage, continuous monitoring. That is one of the most important stages, and we have tools in the market to do that, but maybe the most important thing is that I need to monitor, develop that monitoring tool, because that is what's going to become your process tangible and will allow you to make new decisions with that process. So, how did you structure that process of continuous monitoring? By guaranteeing that anything that's produced evolves in an efficient way which is aligned to the organizational goals of Banco do Brasil.
Monitoring is very important and often neglected point. I saw a study from Harvard Business Review, and they studied over 1,100 scientific articles about development and application of generative AI, and the vast majority of this article talked about the issue of the pre-implementation and implementation, but none of them talked about monitoring, which is a crucial stage of the process. It's not a stage that can be neglected. In our case, what did we do? We developed first specific metrics with your support to identify what type of metrics can be used to monitor. And there are a few metrics of traditional AI that are also used for Gen AI. When we talk about completeness, adherence of response, biases, according to each specific case, we will have to define the metric to be able to do the follow-up. And when we define the metrics, we have decision tree with several different types of metrics to support our managers. When we have a case from that tree, they can identify what is the best metric to help them. And there's a script of semi-ready monitoring, and then we go to understand what tool we will use to monitor, and in this case we use the OxyNext governance tool, which has several innate solutions from IBM. We have identified several other tools. Another of our directing framework is the concept of human curatorship. It's very important for this process to happen, to generate a learning curve within this model and generate the needed adjustments when the solution is set for production. And we call this stage guaranteed. It has to be evaluated on real time to do the necessary adjustments. Thank you, Julie. Hara, tell us how you are planning to structure this control and monitoring process for the next solutions of AI. And you have a hub which you are building several solutions in. How are you doing this monitoring and controlling the next steps for AI? After you put into production, and the message is what we were discussing discussing before. Putting a model up, it's not the end, it's just the beginning, precisely because that's when there are managers that forget about the model, and as any other model, including before Gen AI, after, with time, it loses its adherence. When we used to have more traditional technologies and other previous models, there are ways to measure that. But the main takeaway is for us not to do away with the learning curves. When you have a project, the amount of learning you have, not only regarding Gen AI, I heard a comparison of publication comparing Gen AI with the rush to the moon. It pushes several other needs of the company regarding cloud, infrastructure, cybersecurity. These learnings have to be have to be integrated so we can do it more and more swiftly and with. I would say this is point one. Point two would be the ownership. We establish a single owner for each part of the company. For Gen AI, it's the same thing. You have to have an owner. It's not the scientist, it's just, or IT, it's the business who asked for this challenge. And this is a piece of information we see that the product would be as good as the involvement of the area and the help of the area to help build the database, and that's what it makes the difference when you have to really have good assertivity. First is the learning curve, second the ownership, and the third point is that this is a transversal agenda. We would like to count on the juridic and privacy areas. This is what will make the difference between having a small flight or something that will be sustainable a long time. And we have HR, marketing to really broadcast, because this is a cultural movement. Everybody wants to test the technology, and somehow we have to work with multiple areas to take on board this transformation. Now talking about, or going towards the end of our talk, I would like to ask you very objectively to give us a practical governance example. I will begin with Henrique.
Vou deixar aqui então a mensagem da plataforma.
I'll give you the message of the platform. Create a platform which is central so that all your use cases can be governable. Don't let them grow by area. This is for us our main takeaway, and it's important to have a central point to understand what's going on and govern. This is the message I want to bring.
Vamos lá, Luiz. Dá exemplo para a gente aqui, por favor, de aplicação.
Bom, eu acho que o mais importante
I think that the most important point is creating a strategy, having a well-defined strategy. We cannot leave the models behind, just leave them and think that they're going to solve themselves. No, we need to follow up, we need to perform, and we need to have, as a strategy, and since I'm talking about strategy, we have people who are involved in this work. And if you have people who are involved, you have to do the human work of making people conscious about the usage of these technologies, and you also have to train your professionals. We cannot forget that within this strategic movement, we shouldn't forget people who are in the midst of this process. In the case of the bank, we are really structuring this strategy very well for data and AI, so we can go from one point to the other, taking care of this movement so it can be long-living. And as Professor Silvio Meira would say, the difference between hurrying and being desperate is in the strategy.
Perfeito, Luiz. Julie.
completar esse ponto, né, da
I would like
estratégia
to add on that. It's very
Obrigada por ter
important for the
trazido, porque ele é o ponto
strategy.
de partida
This is
mesmo, né? A
the
IA vai ser tão
starting
boa
point.
quanto
AI will
a
be as
estratégia,
good
quanto o
as the
problema de negócio
strategy,
que a gente
as
der para
the
ela resolver, né?
business
Ela vai falar mais
problem
sobre a
we will
pergunta
give
sobre a resposta.
it to
Mas a gente tem
answer.
agora
It's much
tratado
more
muito
about the
sobre a
question than the
governança dos
answer. We've
agentes de
talked
IA.
about
Aliás, essa feira,
AI
esse evento
agent
aqui, a gente está
governance.
falando
In this
muito
event,
sobre a
we're
IA
talking a lot
agente,
about
e
AI
já
agents of
essa feira
AI.
já tem trazido
And this
desafios para
topic
nós
has
na
brought
governança. Então, a mensagem,
several
assim, a lição aprendida é
government
desenvolver ao longo
governance
mesmo, né, do
challenges. So
ciclo.
the
Não
messages
tem
to
como a gente esperar ter
develop
a
along
governança
the cycle.
100%
We
pronta
cannot
para
wait
começar a
to
experimentar.
have the governance
A governança
100% ready.
precisa
No,
ser um
needs
habilitador
to have to be
desse
a provider of
aprendizado
this learning
corporativo,
curve
né, rumo às tecnologias mais
towards the new
disruptivas.
and
E no
more
caso de
disruptive
agentes de IA,
technology. In
a
the
gente
case of AI
aproveita todo esse
agents, we
conhecimento e
take
todo
the
esse legado
opportunity
da
of
IA generativa, mas já vem com
generative AI
novos desafios,
with
né?
different
Novos
challenges,
desafios, como fazer essa
like
orquestração.
how to
Então, é o
orchestrate
projeto
this
do
whole
momento
process.
e a
This
gente
is a
já vem aí
project
desenvolvendo
of the
em
moment. We
tempo de
have been
produção mesmo como que vai
developing
ser a
it,
governança. Essa tem sido
how the
nosso
governance will go
aprendizado,
ahead.
Thelma.
Obrigada,
This has
viu?
been our learning.
Marco, vamos lá.
Vamos rápido, que temos tempo. Você direto, acho que
I'm going to
trazer
be
alguns
very
exemplos de
direct.
case, né? Você
Some
mencionou.
cases,
Eu
case
acho que
examples.
na auditoria interna a gente tem usado
In the internal
a
audits, we have
inteligência
used
artificial para
artificial
escalar muitos
intelligence to
testes. Por
scale up
exemplo,
several
alguns
tests. For
testes que
example, some
auditor demorava
tests
15
that
minutos para abrir uma planilha
would
e
take an
validar algumas
auditor
informações
15
dentro do
minutes
documento
to open
PDF, por
a
exemplo, hoje a gente consegue
document.
validar
Today, we can
100%
validate 100%
dos dados do
of
banco
the
em alguns minutos,
banking data in a
utilizando
few
inteligência
minutes
artificial.
using
Então,
AI.
o ganho na
So the
auditoria
gain
interna,
in
você consegue ser
internal
muito mais
auditing,
assertivo e de
you can
fato
be much
agregar
more
muito mais ao
assertive
negócio.
and
Você
indeed
não
add a
vai
lot
mais
more to
agora
the
com
business.
algumas visões, é
You
uma
don't have
amostragem. Não, a
a
gente vai e
sample,
olha
for
para
example. No,
100% dos
you look
casos.
at
Então, eu acho
100%
que
of the
para a auditoria
cases.
interna
So
isso
for internal
é
audit,
essencial,
it's
fundamental
crucial.
e não tem como a gente voltar
We
atrás.
cannot go
É
back
isso
on
aí.
this.
Ganhando tempo, né?
That's it,
Vai lá,
making
Haraguchi.
time. Haraguchi.
Acho que para ser bem sucinto,
To be very brief,
como colocaram aqui, é
as they
começar, né?
said,
Tem que iniciar por algum lugar,
it's
mesmo assim,
about
numa plataforma 2 anos atrás.
beginning
O
somewhere.
SharePoint faz milagres, né?
A good
Você, de certa
SharePoint
forma,
can do miracles.
cadastrar lá já ajuda
For you
uma
to
grande
register
organização a
already, that
criar,
already helps
enxergar
a
que
big
tipos de modelos
organization
estão
to
sendo
see
construídos,
what
sobre
type
que
of
temas,
models are being
trabalhar a
built and
taxonomia, como
what
colocou aqui, né? Que
topics, work on
tem uma série de
taxonomy, having a
definições,
definition
né?
glossary
Seja no normativo, seja no outro
for the
instrumento mais formal,
normative or a less
ajuda
formal
você a gerar
instrument. It helps you
entendimento
to
em grandes
generate
organizações, mesmo
understanding
pequenas organizações
even in
também. Então,
smaller
acho que a governança
organizations.
vem
So
aí justamente para
governance
somar,
is
para
really
ajudar a
there
gente a
to
acelerar
help
essa
us
agenda que de
to
fato é
accelerate
muito
this
desafiadora
agenda
e
that is
todos
very
nós temos
challenging
bastante a
and
aprender.
we all have a lot to learn from.
Obrigada, Haraguchi.
Thank you,
Acho que
Haraguchi.
aqui, pessoal, eu deixo como
This
uma
is
mensagem
it. I
final.
give you the
A
last
gente
message.
tentou trazer para
We have
vocês
tried
aqui
to bring you here a
uma variedade,
a
né, de
variety
portes de
of
instituições
institutions,
públicas,
of
privadas, seguros.
public
Né?
and
Eu acho que
private
para vocês
institutions,
entenderem que não
security
importa,
agents.
né? Não preciso
It
colocar a
doesn't
jornada
matter. I
inteira,
don't need to
implementar
put
essa
the
jornada
whole
inteira,
to
mas
implement the whole
começa
journey, but
fazendo pedacinho do
begin by
reporte. Por
doing
exemplo, o
a
Banco Votorantim
small
fez report
piece, like
específico para
Banco do
risco,
Torontim did
né?
a small
A
risk
Bradesco
assessment.
Seguros
Bradesco
aí
Seguros
desenvolvendo toda a
is
sua
developing
jornada.
its journey.
Banco do Brasil, sim,
Banco do
fez toda a
Brasil
jornada
did
porque
all of
tinha
the journey
facilidade
because
da área
it
de
had
validação de
the
modelos,
model
habilidades,
validation
está tudo na
area.
mesma estrutura.
It's all within the same
Bradesco está aí
framework. Bradesco
implementando
is
todos os
implementing its
processos. O
processes.
Banco do Nordeste
Banco do Nordeste,
começando, construindo um alicerce muito
it's
sólido, né,
building a
da
very
governança de dados
strong
para evoluir para a governança de IA generativa.
foundation
Então, não
for the
importa
governance of generative AI. So it
o
doesn't
tamanho,
matter
né,
the
desse controle,
size
desse
of this
monitoramento.
control,
Acho
this
que o que vale
monitoring.
aqui é o
What
apetite, a
is the
prontidão ao
takeaway here
risco que a
is
sua
the
organização
appetite
tem.
that your
E
company
sim,
has, and yes,
começar a
it's
evoluir
about
dentro dessa
beginning to
agenda.
evolve
Como eu
within
comentei
this
no início, é
agenda. As
uma
I said in the
agenda
beginning,
que
it's
vai
an
ter
agenda
evolução,
that will have an
ela não é
evolution.
fixa,
It's
a
not
gente vai
fixed.
aprender,
We
até
will
porque
learn
ninguém
from
aqui
it because
nessa feira
nobody here
conhece, né, ou sabe
knows
tudo que vai
everything
acontecer. A
that will
tecnologia ela está
happen
muito
with
exponencial, a gente
technology.
não
It's
consegue
very
prever ali tudo que
exponential.
vem pela
We are not
frente.
able to
Então, sim, a gente vai
determine what
sempre
comes
lidar com uma
ahead,
situação
but
nova, mas
so
o
we
mais
will
importante é você
also
ter o controle
deal with the new
disso. Uma
situation.
vez
The
que você
important
tem
thing
o
is to have a
controle,
control of that. Once
você
you have the
consegue, né,
control, you are
ajustar o
able to
caminho, trazer
adjust
uma solução,
your
começar a
path
monitorar isso de uma forma
and
muito mais
begin to
rápida
monitor in a
e
much quicker
possibilitar que
way
a
and can allow that your institution is not so exposed to risk. So this is our takeaway. I would like to thank you, all of our participants. Thank you, Henrique, Luiz Humberto, Julie, Paulista. Marco Aurelio, thank you, Haraguchi. It's always a pleasure to be with you. And thank you so much for your kindness and availability to come here and tell us a bit of our own strategies, what you are doing on such a relevant idea. Thank you.